As the duo entered the bookshop, Muriel, Nina, and Maggie sprang to life like meerkats on the savannas, their expressions laden with trepidation and hope. Taken aback by Nina and Maggie's presence, Aziraphale greeted the trio with a feigned smile, discreetly diverting his eyes as he made his way to the rear of the shop to discard his coat and metaphorically hang up his concerns. He kept his gaze steadfastly fixed upon the floor, determined to shield the group from glimpsing the tumultuous whirlwind of disappointment and irritation at their presence lurking in the corners of his soul, despite the profound sense of relief and quiet joy that swelled in his heart, knowing that his dear friends were safe and sound. The room itself seemed to hold its breath, gripped in the silent tension of their reunion. Unable to endure the suspense any longer, Maggie broke the charged atmosphere. Her voice trembling, and her hands locked against her chest as she voiced the question that hung in the air. "How did it go?" she asked breathlessly, her eyes wide with anticipation. Aziraphale's response dripped with disappointment. "Not so good, I'm afraid," he lamented as he walked back towards the group. His words lingered, infusing the room with a palpable sense of unease. Nina reached out, her hand landing gently on Maggie's shoulder, offering a supportive gesture as the weight of Aziraphale's words settled ominously among them. Muriel steadied herself against the edge of a desk, her eyes filled with concern as she posed a series of questions that mirrored their collective worries. What happened? Was there something wrong with the plans? Did we get the wrong vault? Muriel's words tumbled out in a rush, reflecting the anxiety that gripped them all. Aziraphale, still gathering himself, struggled to find the right words to deliver the grim news. Amidst the heavy silence, it was Crowley who broke the tension, leaning casually against a pillar, his arms crossed as he spoke, his gaze fixated on the floor. "No worse," he replied cryptically, his voice barely above a whisper. All eyes snapped to Crowley, as he answered in a single word that sent shockwaves through the room: demons. Audible gasps filled the space as Maggie sank back into her chair, her hand pressed to her chest. Muriel, attempting to quell the rising panic, chimed in, "But you're both okay, that's good, isn't it?" Aziraphale's soft eyes, filled with gratitude, met Muriel's. "Yes, we are both okay," he assured, "thank you, Muriel. We're fine." He hesitated for a moment before adding, "Well, relatively fine. Regrettably, we were trailed by Shax and a group of demons, though we remained blissfully unaware until it was too late. It could have been much worse." He paused as a fearful shudder of what might have been coursed through his essence. "We could have lost far more. If any of you had been there, the outcome might have been far grimmer." Nina's ears perked up as she leaned forward, a hint of curiosity in her voice. "More?" she inquired, her gaze darting around the room to gauge the reactions of the others. "Lost more?" she pressed, sensing that there was more to the story. Aziraphale recounted the events at museum, painting a vivid picture of the evening's proceedings. As he concluded the tale, the weight of his words settled upon the room like a dark portent. "We don't have it," he pronounced simply, the gravity of those words sinking in. "We don't have the key." Nina, sharp and perceptive as ever, fixed her gaze on Crowley. Despite his nonchalant posture and the casual way he leaned against the pillar, she couldn't help but notice a diabolical grin lurking beneath his downturned head. Unable to contain her suspicion, she exclaimed, "You," her voice rising, "you did this, didn't you?" Her accusatory tone hung in the air, adding an electrified hum in the room as everyone seemed to prickle with a heightened tension at the sudden twist in revelation. No, Nina, I'm certain that's not the case." Aziraphale stepped forward, his hands raised in a calming gesture. "Crowley," he implored, his voice a mixture of sternness and pleading, "don't play games now. This is a delicate moment." While he couldn't claim complete certainty about the truth of the situation, Aziraphale's long history with Crowley had made him finely attuned to the demon's unique mannerisms and was not buying into this particular act. Crowley, nonchalant as ever, inclined his head and added dryly, "Well, she's absolutely right," his voice carrying an enigmatic resonance that left everyone in the room astounded, everyone except Aziraphale, who met the statement with a scolding gaze. In that moment he had intended to regale the group with an elaborate tale about how it would be a breeze to slip into the fiery pits of hell, embark on a battle with hordes of demons and snatch the coveted artifact from a sulfuric abyss, all the while savoring the spectacle of their anguished expressions. However, even with all the willpower he could muster, he couldn't resist the urge to flaunt his own cunning. And, although that was certainly true, he was also driven by a desire to sidestep any further reproach from Aziraphale, though he'd rather chew glass than admit it. One thing he would admit was that he had no intention of enduring a few millennia's worth of pointed reminders about this transgression. Which, in a strange way, did offer a modicum of vindication for his immediate urge to show off. With a theatrical flourish, he plucked a small figurine from his pocket and held it aloft between his forefingers, as if presenting a precious gemstone. Squinting at it dramatically, he then concealed the figurine back in his palm, visibly reveling in the reactions of the awestruck assembly. "She's absolutely right. I did it," he proclaimed with an air of unrivaled smugness. His satisfaction was palpable, practically radiating with the thrill of his cunning deception as he concluded, "I substituted a phony effigy with fur and pocketed the genuine artifact in the process." "Forgive me," declared Aziraphale with an air of mock indignation, "but you, my dear Crowley, are an absolute arse." Try as he might to suppress it, a mischievous grin began to stretch across Aziraphale's lips, mirroring the devilish smile that adorned Crowley's. Maggie beamed with excitement at the revelation, and Muriel's joy was near tangible, her impulse to applaud the momentous discovery barely contained in her involuntary soft bounce, as she pressed her palms together at her chest in a physical act to quell the exhilaration. In contrast, Nina breathed a sigh of relief, slumping onto the couch, relinquishing herself exhaustively from the grip of the demon's mind games. "But how can we be certain that this is the key?" Nina wondered aloud, her skepticism evident. "It doesn't look very impressive, does it?" Muriel, her eyes gleaming with delight, responded confidently, "Oh, even I can sense its divine nature from here. That's definitely a celestial instrument." She paused, a mischievous twinkle in her eye as she exclaimed, "I believe I've learned what we do in these situations now." With a playful grin, she reached for a hidden bottle of single malt scotch. Observing her intentions, Maggie swiftly fetched some tumblers, and soon they were passing around celebratory drinks. Reunited once more in their improbable alliance, a sense of camaraderie and relief enveloped the room. As they settled into their seats, Aziraphale turned his inquisitive gaze toward Crowley. "But however did you manage to get it?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "Well, we were surrounded by old bits from Indus, weren't we?" He stalled whilst adjusting his jacket, "and I couldn't hang around you for a few millennia, and not pick up some tricks, Angel," Crowley remarked with a devilish grin, his eyes dancing with mischief. He leaned back in his chair, casually spinning the small, intricately carved effigy in his hand. "I just swapped it for another figurine. They hadn't the faintest idea what we were after in there after all," he explained, delicately setting the figure upon the occasional table. With an ironic raise of his glass, he offered a mock salute before indulging in a self-satisfied sip. "But I saw you hand it over," Aziraphale remarked, the pieces of the puzzle slowly falling into place, his eyes flickering as his astute mind pieced together the mysterious riddle of his actions. As his countenance settled, like a bearing finding its mark on a roulette wheel, he began, "You mean to say," his voice tinged with a sense of realization before pivoting into an incensed pitch of exasperation, "you did human magic?" Crowley swirled his tumbler thoughtfully, his gaze fixed on the intricate patterns of the glass. "Well, they would have noticed a miracle, wouldn't they? Sometimes, a little sleight of hand goes a long way. I believe you taught me that, Angel." Aziraphale, unable to suppress his irritation, his voice laced with the weariness of countless disputes, exclaimed, "But you've always supposed it was demeaning Crowley." A mischievous twinkle sparked in Crowley's eyes as he looked at Aziraphale, a fondness in his voice as he purred, "Oh, you should know by now that I'm full of surprises." Aziraphale's voice quivered with disbelief and a simmering undercurrent of frustration as he began, "I find it rather difficult to believe, truly. I cannot fathom how you could possibly," His initial shock and amazement momentarily swallowed his words. Then, with a determined gaze that conveyed his unshakable determination, he refocused on Crowley. "Why?" Aziraphale inquired, his voice carrying both a sense of incredulity and a touch of reproach. "Did you not think to inform me that you had switched them?" He leaned closer to Crowley, adopting a conspiratorial stance, and whispered with deliberate emphasis, "We certainly had ample opportunities for you to mention this." His tone carried a certain weight, making it clear that he expected a satisfying explanation. "We couldn't be sure who was listening," Crowley gave a sly, knowing wink. "Had to make it believable, Angel." Nina's eyes darted back and forth between Aziraphale and Crowley, with the intensity of someone entranced by a high-stakes tennis match. She raised a finger, pointing accusingly between them, skepticism oozing from her every pore. "Something's different," she declared in measured tones, her voice dripping with suspicion. "What happened?" Aziraphale, drawing his posture into a picture of befuddled innocence, stammered forth. His expression oscillated wildly between alarm and sheepishness. "Oh, nothing," he started, his voice betraying none of the calm he was attempting to feign. "Nothing out of the ordinary. There's nothing like a life-and-death situation to rekindle old friendships." However, Nina wasn't buying it. Her gaze remained unwaveringly fixed on Crowley, who sat there smirking into his glass as if the glass itself were privy to the joke. "Right," she drawled, her tone a gauntlet flung down challenging belief. Aziraphale, trying valiantly to redirect their discourse, urged, "We still have other pressing matters," he continued. "It's rather late, and I've been away from the heavens for far too long. I'll need to get back. And, of course, there's still the issue of finding Raphael." He paused, gazing into the middle distance with the air of someone contemplating a profound enigma. "I do believe that is crucial," he murmured. Maggie, noting the heavy shift in the room, ventured, "Any luck at all?" "No one's seen him for eons," added Muriel, a hint of resignation in her voice. "He could literally be anywhere in the cosmos." "Eons." "But yes, indeed," Aziraphale concurred with a dark solemnity. "I fear I've nearly exhausted all possibilities thus far, but I'd be better placed to locate him back up there." His brow furrowed in deep thought once more. "I'd better get back. If we can reconvene tomorrow, say, early afternoon, around 2ish, I should be able to make it back then." A knowing glance passed between him and Crowley as he explained, "Michael's conducting some sort of defense fitness class again. I dare say I will be able to easily slip away." Crowley nodded despondently, as if recalling a particularly unpleasant memory from the celestial archives. "The lunch rush won't be over by then," Nina remarked, her tone tinged with regret. "I won't be able to pop in." She gestured a nod toward Maggie. "Maggie's helping me out as well, I'm still short-staffed." Aziraphale's expression remained warm and reassuring. "Oh, not to worry. Muriel can share notes and revisit the scroll, see if there's anything more that can help us with the key. You've done wonderfully, and at this time, I regret there's nothing much more you can do." His words carried a genuine appreciation for their efforts. "That's my cue," Crowley declared with all the dramatic flair of someone about to make a grand exit, settling his glass and preparing to leave. "You will be back tomorrow?" Aziraphale's eyes pleaded with an earnestness only an angel could muster. Crowley turned back, somewhat begrudgingly. "Yeah, sure. Not sure what good I'll be if you're doing book stuff," he stated as a subtle implore for a waiver to the request, but as he noted the look in Aziraphale's eyes he relented. "Fine, I'll pop by for 5 minutes, but I've got to make a good appearance back in hell after tonight's escapade." He raised an eyebrow, a serpent's grin playing on his lips. "Keep them off the scent." Yes, good thinking," remarked Aziraphale with a nod that was more of a benediction. And with that, Crowley sauntered out of the bookshop. With her accusatory gaze still fixed on Aziraphale, Nina began to speak, but he cut in before she could delve into further questions about the museum antics. "So, Muriel," he interjected, changing the topic with the elegance of a maestro orchestrating a symphony, are you sure you have a good enough hiding place that the Metatron or the others won't be able to detect or find? Muriel responded with a bright, otherworldly smile, oh, yes, definitely. The Metatron has popped down a few times to check on me, and they've not suspected anything. There was a fleeting hurt in her eyes as she added, I don't think they try too hard to see if I'm concealing anything, to be honest. Their shortcoming, my dear, not yours, Aziraphale reassured her, his words carrying the weight of a guardian angel's solace, and Muriel's radiant optimism returned. As the summit reached its end, they found themselves once more reflecting upon the modest strides they had taken, and the elusive enigma of Raphael continuing to slip through their grasp. For Aziraphale, the constraints of time weighed heavily, he couldn't afford an extended stay away from the hallowed confines of heaven. Regardless of how diligently he maintained his paperwork, the divine bureaucracy had a knack for detecting prolonged absences. Fearing that his meticulous records would not stand to much scrutiny if given any cause for deeper inspection, Aziraphale reluctantly bade his regrettable farewell to the assembly, committing to reconvene the very next afternoon. Their collective resolve remained unshaken, and as they dispersed, each member carried their own unique burden of newfound knowledge and heightened anticipation.